This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
The holiday season is now approaching, but at BlueNile.com, there's always something to celebrate. Whether you're looking for everyday elegance to elevate a casual outfit or a statement piece worthy of your biggest holiday looks, Blue Nile brings sparkle to any occasion. With some of the highest quality standards in the industry and jewelry experts on hand to answer any questions, you can be confident in your purchase. Right now, celebrate the season with 30% off at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hi everybody and welcome to Writers on Film Festivals. I'm here with David Moriquand.
Hello, John.
And Amber Bryce.
Hi, John.
They're both from Euronews. Amber Bryce is the social media coordinator. Yes. Is that the correct title?
I much prefer coordinator. Makes me sound more important, so yes.
Excellent. That's what I'm just going to promote people as we go. And I believe Euronews is, David is Euronews' owner.
You're lying, but I mean, soon enough, I will instigate a putsch. No, just the deputy culture editor for my sins.
And so we're recording this on the Tuesday, the 3rd of September, and I can't remember what day of the festival this is. The 6th of the festival?
I think it's 6, yes, but time has no meaning at this point. It's that kind of like not quite past the midway. We're in semi-final stretch, and yeah, it's all a bit of a blur.
I talked to my daughter on the phone the other day, and she said the summer has slipped through our fingers, and I thought that's absolutely true. Slip through our fingers indeed. So we're going to talk about a few films that we've all seen. There's one film that only me and David has seen, and so we're going to talk about that one first, and that's because it showed a few days ago, about 3 or 4 days ago, and that's Brady Corbett's The Brutalist, which is the third film in a trilogy. All of the previous films showed at Venice, starting with The Childhood of a Leader in 2018, I think.
Yeah, and Vox Lux afterwards, which was in competition, starring Natalie Portman.
Yeah, Childhood of a Leader, I think, was on Horizonte as a subsection. So he's stepped up from the first film to competition, and now the third film is also in competition. Stars Adrian Brody as a Hungarian Jew who has fled Nazi persecution and actually imprisonment. Is a Holocaust survivor, arrives in the United States as an immigrant, and re-establishes his career as an architect in a way which is involves him with a rich American played by Guy Pearce called Harrison Van Buren. A very reptilian Brad Pitt-like Guy Pearce performance. What did you make of the film, David?
I loved it. I'm not even going to beat about the bush. I think it's a tremendous step up from his previous films, which I really liked. And it's this American saga, this sprawling 3 hours and 40 minutes plus interval intermission, sorry. And I, at first, I thought, oh my God, it's only his third film. This sounds like some sort of mad passion project run amok. And to my surprise, there isn't really a scene that is wasted. And it gripped me from start to finish, and the way it deals with very weighty but non-portentous themes of the immigrant experience, of the American dream. I know that's a very typical thing to say, but it does really much deal with that. And art in general, and what it means to be an artist. And I thought it was just, all in all, remarkable and very... I know this is also going to be a very talked about touchstone, but it is something that Paul Thomas Anderson would have been very proud of.
Yeah, I thought there was Paul Thomas Anderson there, certainly that lofting ambition, that wonderful sort of visual sense as well. Cinematography here is amazing. I think it looks epic and grand, but it also made me think of some of the great silent classics like The Crowd, King Vidor, these real... It's just epic in every sense of the word, not only its length. It's got a pounding score, which is utterly insistent, very reminiscent of the Scott Walker score for Childhood of a Leader, and of course the film is dedicated to Scott Walker.
Absolutely, and when you say epic in every sense, there's also shot in VistaVision, which I looked it up, and essentially apparently this is the first American film since the film One-Eyed Jacks in the 60s to be shot in VistaVision, and he uses several, we saw it in 70mm here in Venice, which is a treat, and I know that there is this grandeur, but at no point in my mind does his ambition get the better of him. This is a project that is 6 years in the making, and he has, I think, not only tonal control and stylistic control, but he's joined all the way by performers who really understood the assignment. And Adrian Brody, I think, is really fantastic in this. I haven't seen him in a lot recently, and it was really lovely to be reminded of quite a performer he is. And Felicity Jones, who plays his wife as well. I very much enjoyed the antagonists of the film, so Guy Pearce, but also his son, who's played by Joe Alwyn. So you have Harrison, who is the patriarch, but his son Harry. And of course, there's a lot like father, like son, and also like son, like father, because there are a few moments in the film where there's some connective DNA between them that I won't spoil here, but some very heinous acts committed. And all in all, I thought that the like I said, the ambition was there. It was really an ambitious swing, a gamble that paid off. But not only that, it really hit home in the sense that it is about cultural gatekeeping as well, and how, so this Adrian Brody's character is this Bauhaus architect, and how cultural elitism and wealth will always triumph in front of social mobility. And, in mentioning the American dream and how there is, we see the Statue of Liberty upside down at the beginning when Laszlo Toth, the name of the architect played by Adrian Brody, arrives through New York by boat. And it is this just reminder of, give me your poor, you're hungry, and it is this constant American myth-making that essentially rings hollow at every turn, that you can trumpet very powerful ideals, but the reality will always be something more sinister.
Yeah, and I think that really draws to mind the great novelists as well of the 20th century. Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead is definitely referenced throughout, although this is a much more socially conscious version. She's very much about the biography of the great man who is held back, whereas Adrian Brody is anything but a great man. In fact, he's very much defined by his traumas and his failings. He's a heroin addict. He's a drunk to some extent. He's got a relationship with his wife which is less than perfect. There's a real suggestion that he's got a trauma-induced, heroin-induced impotence as well. So there's a real sense that people are building these lofty buildings, but they're always have these foundations in the mud and in the earth and in maybe deep places we don't want to explore. But this film is keen on exploring. We could talk about this for hours, but let's move on to some films that we've all seen, so Amber can enjoy and join in the conversation. So today, I think the biggest film, one of the biggest films of the festival showed, and this is Luca Guadagnino's Queer, his adaptation of William S. Burroughs' quite early novel, Pre-Naked Lunch. I think it came after Junkie, in which Daniel Craig plays the protagonist, Bill Lee, as he saunters around Mexico, kind of looking for sex and drugs. Is that a fair summation, Amber?
I think so. It felt very much like a very sensual, textured exploration of desire and queer desire in particular to me, which I guess is quite a common theme of Luca Guadagnino's movies. And I really liked it.
Excellent. What did you think of Daniel Craig? Because, of course, we're used to seeing him as James Bond. He's done other roles, lots of other roles from Our Friends in the North on. But what did you see of him here? Is this a very new side to his performance?
I think so. I can't comment on whether it's because I haven't read the book, so I can't comment on how accurate a depiction it is of the character from the book. But to me, his portrayal was great. It was very, a lot came through quite subtly, and I felt that, I could feel sort of the inner workings of his emotions coming across on the screen, and I think Daniel Craig has a great presence on screen in general. And it was interesting to see him in a role like this because, obviously we're used to seeing him in, I think of James Bond and, bigger roles that he's been in, and this felt like quite a new thing for him, and I thought he was really good in it. I completely got swept up in the character that he was playing, and it was very, I felt very, immersed in that character that he was playing. So I thought he was really good.
He's kind of quite a tragic figure as well, isn't he? Because he's sort of an older bloke, it's an obscure object of desire with this young guy that you're never sure what slightly enigmatic as to whether he likes Bill Lee as much as Bill Lee likes him.
Yes, so it's kind of you're following him and thinking sort of there's a sad sort of desperation in him, and you are kind of thinking, why is he so intent on chasing this? And there's also like an awkwardness sometimes those interactions as well that he's having, that character. But I thought he portrayed it really well, and I think it was just a lot of the moments, particularly towards the end of the film, where one thing that Luca Guadagnino I think does really well is sort of these very slow, long shots of characters. And for instance, there was a scene I think where he's just smoking in a room, and there's music playing, and it's sort of building in intensity, and you're just watching him smoking for ages, but it says so much, and you feel that you are getting so much from that character just watching them smoking and drinking. And it's hard to express really why that is, but I think it's probably the combination of the music and also just the kind of it's this weird thing with Luca Guadagnino's movies where you can just feel and like you understand, connect with a character even though they're not speaking, they're not telling you anything, they're just on camera and you're watching them and observing them just in a moment of kind of solitariness and just doing something on their own. It's hard to express, but I definitely got a lot of that from watching his character.
Yeah, I thought there was so much in as you say. I think that's really interesting because that's exactly how I was feeling. There's a moment where he's just sitting preparing himself a shot of heroin, and it almost like you knew everything you needed to know from that moment, and Luca allows it to last. You know, he doesn't move his camera away, and I think when he does that, the film is its most successful. What did you think of the film, David?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I think there's a lot to unpack in this film, and I don't know if I've got all my ideas and all the ways I appreciate it in order or in any way clear. But I just know, like Amber, I was very much swept up in it, and I thought that the film's progression, it's told in 3 chapters. And one of the first chapter is very much Daniel Craig's character on the prowl, but then afterwards it does kind of move to other territories, and it progressively gets a bit more like a fever dream. And these kind of dream sequences I thought were incredibly powerful, but also they dodged some of the cliches. They kind of sidestep what I would imagine as a kind of drug-fueled fever dream, or the fever dream of somebody who might be dying, and just really the symbolism throughout is huge. And like I said, I don't know if I've got it all figured out because there are loads of insects, animals, but there's just this tactility to all of it that is I find uniquely mesmerizing. I know, however, John, you weren't a huge fan.
I wasn't going to go there, but
sorry.
No, I wanted to hear the more. I prefer to hear people appreciating films than depreciating them. But since you asked, I wasn't as big a fan as you guys. I think it. I don't think this is necessarily a problem. There is a lot of baggage that comes with making a film based on a William S. Burroughs novel. We have David Cronenberg's Naked Lunch to consider, with Peter Weller's unbelievable performance in that as the same character, essentially Bill Lee. And
Ready to pop the question? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds, and they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code LISTEN to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code LISTEN at BlueNile.com for $50 off. BlueNile.com, code LISTEN.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Burroughs himself performed that character for a long time. I don't think that's necessarily a problem for the film, because ultimately the years have passed, and I don't think William S. Burroughs is as big a figure as he used to be, certainly in the 90s when he was appearing in films like Drugstore Cowboy, and had cameos, and he had a rock album, a hip-hop album out with his spoken word. So, but Luca does put in the film very references, I feel, to Burroughs' work, rather than making a Burroughs film in and of itself. So, for instance, the William Tell sequence where he shoots the glass off the head is from William S. Burroughs' real life, where he actually killed his wife. And that made me think, what was his wife's name? Was it Jean, by any chance? Yeah. Which would explain why Eugene was Jean as well. Yeah. So there were things. I mean, one thing I didn't like, but this is on a very technical level, was it just felt like a very studio-bound film. And I felt a lot of the CGI of the backgrounds, and but that is such a a small criticism, I think, maybe a slightly unfair criticism.
No, I see what you mean, but and also one thing that strikes me is I'm a huge Guadagnino fan, but this will be, like, for casual viewers, a very hard one to recommend. Because usually, whether it's Challengers most recently, but when you think back to A Bigger Splash, or even Suspiria, which, you know, wasn't exactly, you know, easygoing, and there was a lot to unpack there as well. I think I will, not that I will hesitate to recommend it, I will definitely just say, no, it's really worth seeing. But for some people, I don't know. I think they might have a hard time with this because it is one of his more kind of oblique films. Whereas previously, what I like is that Guadagnino manages also, much like Amber was saying, to, you know, with the way he films his characters, to expose so much about them without having to result to, you know, to spelling it out. Whereas here, there's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot you're not always sure where it's going, and because it not devolves but evolves into all these kind of fever dream sequences, and you're not quite sure at times where it's going towards the end, that I think a lot of casual audiences, and I mean that in, you know, with no snobism whatsoever, might be much in the same way I was, a little bit bemused at best, confused at worst.
Yeah, I want to go back to something Amber said as well about the look of the film. I thought the clothes looked great. I thought, as you say, you know, there was some soundtrack choices. Nirvana was used. What did you make of that stuff?
So I'm a big fan of, whenever I watch movies, I'm obsessed with looking at all the set design and the objects around, and I loved kind of, you know, there was shots of like a, you know, crackly TV and the cars and I feel like the white crumpled suit. I watched La Chimera, and, you know, it's coming back in, the kind of men walking around like scruffy, kind of grubby white suits, and I loved the ambience of it, and particularly in the opening where they had all these kind of images of you know, different things like the cigarettes and just objects that were around that told you a lot about the character and their world that they inhabited. So I really liked that element of it, and the way that it really captured the mood and the feel of that particular time and space that Rose was in. So I think that added a lot to it, and it kind of contrasted them with when you had the more sort of abstract moments, realist moments of hallucinations and him sort of slipping into his mind with things. It was it was sort of grubby, but also very very charming as well. So I enjoyed all the details of that. I've got it all in my notes, in fact, all the like little details that I liked. I'll have to look at them to remind myself of all the set design bits that I really liked. But yeah, I always take note of that stuff, and it's probably why I enjoyed it so much as well. Just the
sort of meticulous detail, and no, absolutely. Let's move on to another film. I was going to sort of link it to queer because of the queerness of the filmmaker, but in fact this is possibly his least queer film, perhaps. This is Pedro Almodovar's The Room Next Door. Thank you. Everybody watching could see me close my eyes as I desperately tried to think of the title. This is his first English language feature film. He's rehearsed with a couple of shorts, The Human Voice and A Strange Way to Live, was it?
Strange Way of Life.
Strange Way of Life, almost there. With Ethan Hawke, recently compared to me. I don't know how that works, but okay. And Pedro Pascal.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Got there in the end. This film stars Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton is a woman with cancer, and she asks her friend, Julianne Moore, who's a writer, to help her just by being there while she lives her last days and considers euthanasia as a possible way out. Is that a fairly good? So what was your take on this film?
I like this a lot. one thing that took me out of it took me a while to get in the film. Purely, I think, due to the dialogue, I found it a little bit stilted at first. And I don't know whether, I know Amber and I have talked about this, like whether it was a language barrier, but yeah, I don't know. But then by the end of it, I was very taken with it, and I think that the way it deals with topics of life, death, and indeed euthanasia, which is, you know, a controversial topic. I was quite taken by this. Obviously, it's incredibly stylish. Features all the color palettes that we're used to with Almodovar, but also just these two rather magnetic performances. I don't think it's by any means one of his great films, but there is something about, like I said, the way it deals with one protagonist is Tilda Swinton's protagonist is not afraid of death. She almost embraces death, and the way Julianne Moore can't quite fathom that something that is living will one day end, and the to and fro between the two, and the way Julianne Moore's character progressively understands her role in her friend's life is, I thought, actually quite touching towards the end.
What about you, Amber?
So, I have my reservations about this because I love Pedro Almodovar, and I felt like actually this was a very different film for him. It's one that I've not really seen him do, and it makes sense because it's his first English language film. It felt like he let go of a lot of the melodrama and flamboyance of his other films. It's still there in the set design and in moments, but it's far more subdued, and obviously it's dealing with some very heavy topics of assisted suicide and euthanasia, and also female friendship, which I really like that focus of it too. And the fact that I think I'm correct in saying this, that he was inspired by the kind of middle of the book that it's based on, and in particular the conversations between the two women. And I like that as well, when it's sort of this confinement to a particular relationship. So a lot of the film is just them, and obviously it's dealing with very, very important subjects. It lost some of its emotional weight for me in the dialogue. It was just some of the dialogue that I was jotting down, and I kind of felt it. And it's difficult to know whether I'm misreading it, misunderstanding it, or if it's a translation issue, because Almodovar has always done sort of, you know, kind of this quite abrasive, blunt, almost soap opera-y dialogue, and it works a lot of the time. In this, with the subject matter, it took me out of it, and sometimes it was very funny. I don't know if it was always meant to be, but sometimes it was, and other times it was. It ended up making the script feel very heavy-handed. So we heard Tilda Swinton a lot talking about her character, talking about, you know, wanting to die and being impatient to die, and being a war correspondent, and which was talked about a lot. And also these kind of moments, like we have a flashback to when Tilda Swinton's character, I think it's Martha, she's talking about her ex-boyfriend, and when she told him she was pregnant, and he replies with something like, "Oh, I was planning to go to San Francisco," and it just, I was like, is that meant to be funny, or is it just? It sort of was this weird thing, robotic thing, of the characters would say every line of dialogue as an action. It was like, they're telling us. It doesn't feel natural. That was the thing. And for dealing with such emotionally complex topics, I wanted there to be a bit of waffliness, a bit of like, clumsiness in the dialogue. And it didn't feel like there was any of that. It was all very like straight, blunt responses and quite robotic. And that is where it fell down. There also, Pedro did squeeze some melodrama in. We were talking about this earlier, with like a backstory of like her ex-boyfriend, Martha's ex-boyfriend, being involved in a fire, and there were kind of these soap opera-y bits that still made their way in. But I think it was very powerful in many ways, and I obviously loved the fact it still very much felt like an Almodovar film, just a very different one that I'm not quite used to. So I walked out of it liking it, but it didn't make me emotional, which I found, maybe I'm just a psychopath, but it just didn't make me feel that emotional, and I feel like it should have done, because it was dealing with such an intense topic.
Yeah, I love the idea of the dialogue. It reminded me of a Sparks song, where the lyrics are absolutely, I love you so much. It's just a literal, this is a love song and this is what happens and this is, subtext is for cowards.
Yeah, very literal. I kind of wish maybe that could be seen as a commentary on how we should all talk about death more. We should just be more blunt about it and just say exactly what we're thinking and say it straight, because it would make for some quite awkward conversations, but you could read it like that, I guess, as well. But it was very literal, wasn't it?
Yeah, her boyfriend comes back from Vietnam and says, I've seen some terrible things, I think I'm completely fucked up. And it's like, there's no, let's get to the bottom of this. It's like, that is the bottom.
I have to say, another one of my favourite bits was when Tilda Swinton loses her euthanasia pill, and she's just like, I got it from a mathematician on the dark web. It's really sinister on there or something. And it's like telling us, we know the dark web is sinister. You don't have to tell us that it is,
Yes.
It just got me.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 references to the dark web in that conversation, as if Pedro had just Googled it.
No, it's true. But one thing, because Amber and I went to the press conference for this, and I found it rather, and I know that this should be taken apart from the film itself, but there is one thing that I found, the euthanasia aspect of this film, I thought, was specifically in the second half of the film, was rather well handled. And Pedro made I say Pedro as if I know him. No, Pedro.
We've been talking about Luca as well.
Yes, exactly.
Who I have met, actually, so I think I can call him.
You can be on first name basis with him.
Yeah.
But Pedro Almodovar, considering I maintain a safe and respectful distance, is mentioned, and something which I didn't know the statistic of, is that in Europe there are only 4 countries who have legalized euthanasia. So Portugal is on its way, but the Netherlands is one, Luxembourg is another, and Spain. And especially nowadays, when it is, I know it's a big topic of conversation in France. I think this it's interesting, because you can, like the Tilda Swinton character says, she wants to die with dignity, and there is the argument to be made that you don't really die with dignity, you live with dignity. But there is something to be said about a person being able to choose how they want to end their lives. And I think that the film resonated with me on that front, is that it is about self-determinism, and it is about these women who share a bond, and this woman who is very, very steadfast in essentially saying, no, I want to end my life this way, and it must happen on my terms. And there is something that moved me in that, and with that incredibly depressing statistic which brought it home for me.
And I also like the fact that Writers on Film guest Roger Lewis is referenced throughout the film, because he's the author of Erotic Vagrancy, the book that they buy in the bookshop and then talk about later. Also, they reference Buster Keaton,
yes,
who is one of my favourite filmmakers, and they reference extensively James Joyce, The Last Story of the Dubliners, The Dead, and the film John Huston directed is referenced. So it reminds me of some of those mid-70s, early 80s Woody Allen films, where it's referencing lots of cultural touchstones, which as an audience member, either you know or you want to get to know as soon as the film is over. Felt very rich in culture in that way. I just want to have one shout out to John Turturro, who I think sort of wanders in and steals the film a little bit with his scene with Julianne Moore. What did you think of Turturro?
Yeah, I thought he was good. I had a bit of a problem with some of the side characters, because I sometimes felt like it was detracted from, like I said, the little bubble that we were in with the two mains. But no, I think it was important for his character to come in, to have that conversation, to give us more background on the characters and their lives. And yeah, I think it was very good.
Excellent. Well, I tell you what, let's leave it there for today. We've still got some films to talk about. We've still got some films to come. But we'll reconvene and we will have another report from the festival in the coming days. All that's left is for me to thank you, David.
Thank you very much, John.
And you, Amber.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to premiere on your podcast today.
Thanks so much.
Cue the fireplace and your favorite fall movie. There's nothing better than a cozy evening at home with a glass of First Leaf wine. First Leaf is a personalized wine club that delivers right to your door. Sounds magical, right? They get to know your favorite tasting notes, which varietals you enjoy, and whether you prefer sweet or dry wines. So in every shipment, you get bottles tailored to your unique palate. Go to tryfirstleaf.com/fall to get your first 6 wines for just $44.95 with free shipping.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.